All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another round of coffee and questions. What's today's topic? Let's talk about Harbor Freight's HVLP spray gun. Now, let me show you the ad real quick and I'll get into the conversation. And I'll show you a couple of things that I learned that makes it handy to use. Okay, so what I decided to do is I'm going to repaint my entire house, and I'm going to repaint the trim on it and the walls and everything else. And so I got several bids, and I think the best bid of them all was from a painter that was needing the work, and he wanted close to $3,000. And I thought that was kind of steep, and of course he blamed it on the economics of the times and the supply chain and blah blah blah. And then I had a handyman kind of a guy come in, and he's like, he would do X amount of it for 2,500, and then the fascia and all this stuff would be different. And anyway, after looking at these bids, I decided I'm going to do it myself. And so what were my options? I could rent an airless spray gun from out at Home Depot, drop the hose in a 5-gallon bucket, and then mask everything off and just shoot it, and it would probably go fairly quick. Well, I work full time like a lot of people, and I decided I'm not in a rush to do it, and I know I could certainly save a lot of money by doing it myself. So what I did is I got a roll of plastic sheeting, Visqueen, got it out at Home Depot, online, and I'll leave you the links on stuff that I bought from Amazon, but I got some really good painter's tape. Actually, I was a little skeptical when I got it, but it's really good tape. And I got it for a good price. So like I said, I'll leave you the links below. So I masked the stuff off, and then I went out and I bought some paint along with buying this Harbor Freight HVLP. And what I bought is I bought Bear. And it's a good paint. I mean, it's a real good paint, and it's not cheap. It's right here. Okay, so this was running, 50 some odd dollars, a gallon. And so I think I spent under 900, more than 825, I don't know, somewhere in there. It didn't matter. I knew that it would land, price-wise somewhere in that range, and it has, and I still got about 3/4 of a gallon here left over. Now for the trim, I also bought 1 gallon, which was more than enough because I only painted the very face of it and then the lip under it, and I did it in this dark brown, Bear stain. Okay, so those were the paints that I got. And then I thought, okay, this canister's not all that big, but then I thought, like I said, I'm not in a rush, so how did I go about this? Okay, so I had an empty container, and you can buy these straining nets out there. I think if I got it at Harbor Freight or Home Depot, like $1 or $2, I only used one of them. I stretched it over a paint can, and then I poured about 3/4 of one of these gallons into this, clean container. Okay, then you can do additives, and Home Depot sells them to thin the paint. My neighbor, he used just water. But where you dip the stick in and pull it up, you'll see it kind of glops down like when you first buy the paint. So I just used the stick, and I followed, another friend of mine's instructions. He goes, just dip it in there, and when you pull it up and it runs nice and easy and smoothly, just leave it alone and try it. And so I know that sounds like a real basic kind of newbie approach, but it worked. And then I used a drill right here, and I had a bit on the end that I had bought, and again, I bought it off Amazon. It's just a simple little mixer bit for paint, and I stirred it up. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and I'm ready to paint. So now it came to the gun. Now I have another gun, works exactly the same way, but it's much smaller, and I use it for just spraying lacquer. And that's all I use it for. But because the reservoir was so small, and these had a little bit of a sale going on, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try it. Now, I'm going to show you how to tear this thing apart and give you a couple of tips and tricks, along the way. So I'm going to zoom in down here, and let's talk about the gun itself, and I'll show you a couple of tips that I ran into that was real helpful. So let's talk about the tear down and the cleaning of the gun. And you may run into situations where it's not spraying right while you're spraying, or it's the end of the day, or what have you. So the first thing is this cap comes off, okay? And underneath the sink in the garage, I cleaned this out real well, so it almost looks like there was no paint ever put on it. This right here, the canister, this unscrews, okay? And I clean this out real well in the basin sink, and I clean out the threads down here, so I make this thing super clean. Okay, so now what do we do next? Well, right here, Now some people will put Teflon tape on here. I don't do that because I like taking the canister on and off at different times for cleaning, and then if you're rethreading it, it's not going to matter anyway, and it doesn't leak, so mine work fine. Okay, now this is the ring cap for the spray tip. This comes off, and you'll see right here, I make sure it's all clean in here, and you'll see there's little openings on each tip, and this is where the air comes out, and it helps to create that pattern. You can run a needle through here, but these generally, I mean, they're not going, to plug on you. So, but I still take from the dollar store, I have a container, let's say I've got it filled with water, I go ahead and I throw that in there, because along with the gun, when you buy it, you get yourself a nice little brush, and you can clean everything out. Now we're talking about latex paint or water-based paint at this time, okay? The same thing would hold true if you're using lacquer. You just use lacquer thinner instead. But you got the little brush, you're in good shape. So now let's talk about how we're going to clean the rest of the gun. Back here, this is for your volume control, your flow. And I just unscrew this, and there's a spring right here that'll come out. I drop it in there for cleaning. The same thing with this, because sometimes you get some paint buildup around the threads, so I just throw it all in there. Then the next thing is, if you hold the trigger, I can take the needle out for this, and I can put that in there. So what's the next step? Okay, well, you need a wrench. This is 19 millimeter. It came with the Cobalt. I did not get one with the Harbor Freight gun, but you need a thin 19 millimeter wrench, and it'll fit on here, and you can go ahead and you can take off the spring tip itself right here. Now this is where most of the plugging and problems are going to happen, or at least it did for me. And I take it out and I clean it out in here, and I do it real well using the little brush, and it's got air holes around this outside. Now with those, what I do is, you can use a needle, of pretty much any kind, and I have a needle, and I make sure that those little things stay nice and open. But I go ahead, I throw it in here for cleaning also. So now this is clean, and we're ready to reassemble it. Now there is a little trick that I picked up off of YouTube, is this comes with a 1.2 millimeter size opening right here. And some of them were suggesting, I'm sorry, it was 1.4 millimeter hole right here in the tip. And someone suggested, just take a drill bit, drill it out to 2 millimeters. So after taking a look at my little index chart over here, that's a 5/16 drill bit. I put it in a hand drill. I went through here one time, made sure there was no burrs. And so this will also help, at least with exterior painting, like I said, latex thick paint. This helps it much better in terms of your spray pattern. Okay, so after you're done and you've drilled this out, well, let's reassemble it. Now the reassembling part of this is easy. I just put this on by hand, just like this. I use that 19 millimeter wrench, and I just snug this a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. Here's the needle. Now I make sure this needle is clean, and I wipe it down with a dry cloth. Now you can use a blowgun anywhere along the way, and that will certainly help out a lot. But let's go ahead, let's put the needle back in. Just like that. The spring goes in next. It's nice and clean. We need to go ahead and we need to put this nut back on. Now what I do, and I'll show you, this helps out quite a bit, is I open this up all the way to start. Now I go ahead and I put this on, and I just turn it in a little bit, like a half a turn or so once you get it started. Okay, like right there, that's about a half a turn. Then I use this setting nut like this, because now what that's going to do, it's going to allow the maximum amount of flow coming through here. We'll set the pressure in a little bit, but now I got my max flow, and that's what I want, at least with the latex paint and painting the exterior of the house. Okay, so again, then I go ahead and I put this back on and set this in a horizontal for right now, and I'll probably leave it that way actually when I start painting. And then you're going to screw the canister back on, and I just put it on snug, hand tight, but like snug, about like that. Now I'm ready to fill this with paint. Now before I do, down here at the bottom, you're going to see right here, okay, and I leave this wide open, okay, and this is your pressure control, but you don't have a gauge. But if you leave this wide open, like I do right now, I have a gauge that I bought out at Harbor Freight, or I bought it online. Like I said, I'll leave you the links, but I'd rather have the pressure gauge because I have a compressor, and it will matter. You're not going to run this off of a little tiny pancake compressor or anything. You got to have a decent sized compressor. I don't really know, unless somebody wants to drop a comment, what the minimum would be. I mean, in my case, I have a very large compressor. It's 60-gallon, Ingersoll Rand, 5 horsepower, 2-stage, 60-gallon, and I use 3/8 air hose. Now, if you're in a shop, most shops will use 5/8. Well, what does 5/8 do? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with pressure, but it allows a much more increased amount of volume to come through that line. Or I suppose you could use 1/2 inch. I had 3/8. I wasn't going to change it all out, and what I did worked fine. Okay, so I went ahead and I hooked it up. Now here you can increase the pressure by turning it this way, and you just look at the gauge and you set your pressure. So here's how easy this becomes. If I have my air hose coming up and I have an inline filter, I'll leave you the disposable link below, but I have inline disposable filters. I hook it onto here, I got it on. You can start off by filling it with whatever you want. You can fill it with water, whatever you want to do. But you can turn around, and I adjust this to between 40 and 45. Now that's what I did for the consistency of the paint that I was explaining to you. I mixed in a very crude fashion, and it worked beautifully between 40 and 45. So now your pressure's set. You don't have to mess with this anymore. This, your flow, it's wide open. You don't have to mess with this anymore at all. So, and you have your pressure, like let's say it's set 40 to 45. Go ahead and shoot it against the wall or something if it's water, and take a look at your spray pattern. Okay, how's the pattern coming out? This is going to help you with that fan pattern. Now what I did is I opened it up all the way like this, and somewhere between 1/2 a turn, in this range, between 1/2 a turn, a quarter one way or the other, I was able to take like this real wide and bring it down to almost like a very fat, wide paintbrush. And I wasn't getting a lot of overspray. And for the type of paint I was using and the way I thinned it, it worked beautifully. Whatever you're using, just experiment around. But the only control you're going to have at that point really is right here. It's just going to be controlling that fan pattern. So then I went ahead, I put the paint in, I put the lid on, I had my hose set up, I had the windows masked off, and I just started spraying, and I thought, well, this is working, beautifully. Now, it did take me longer than if I would have used an airless, but the cost savings was huge. I saved easily, if I went with one of those bids, probably close to $2,000, and I just did it myself. And it's not that hard to do, okay? And you might even find it to be a little bit of a fun thing, because you can actually do a better job than some of these people out there that are willing to come over and paint it, and they put it on real light and you still see fading and all this other stuff. I just took my time and make sure I coated everything really well, and it turned out great. All right, so questions. Let me put this down, and I'll reset the camera. I'll be right with you. We'll do questions and answers. All right, so questions and answers. Now the first one was, did I use anything else on the exterior? Yes, I'm going to go show you a fascia board that was cracked severely. And I use Durham's, water putty, and this stuff will set up like concrete. Got it off Amazon, it's right here. I've used it in different places, around the house. This stuff works fantastic. Now, how did I mix it? Because you'll see where people will say, mix it thick, like peanut butter. No, I didn't do that because I had a lot of fine cracks in areas. I mixed it a little more on the thin side. It's a no-brainer. Just play around with it. If you mixed it a little too thin in one of these Tupperware containers, you can add a little water. If it's a little watery, add a little more powder. You'll get it the way that you want it for the the task that you're doing. Okay, for me, this is what worked. This stuff works fantastic. I'm going to take you out back in a minute, and I'm going to show you, and I'll show you what we did. I tell you, one of the questions was, it's kind of a pain in the butt to tear it down and put it back together. You can do it lightning quick. The more you keep this thing clean while you're going through this, I sprayed my entire house and walls. I might have taken this thing down 5 or 6 times when I felt it wasn't spraying as well as I wanted to. I quickly cleaned it, reassembled it in maybe 5 minutes or less, while I was straining out another gallon of paint or whatever I was doing. And I'm back to spraying with a wonderful pattern again. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. Your settings are, like I said, just leave them and check them once in a while. You know, check your pressure, check your spray pattern. You're going to be home free with it. It works fine. Okay, another question was, issues that I ran into, which has nothing to do with this, but I did run into a couple of issues. Under the slider, I would get, like the sliding glass door, when I had a bad rain, I'd get a little bit of leakage there. So I cleaned it all out, and I bought this stuff from Sika. It's I don't know, it says Pro Select Crack Flex Sealant. Now, Crack Flex Sealant, I live out in desert cities where it gets real hot. Now, I've used this before on the other side of the house for the slider probably a year or more ago. It worked beautifully, so I went ahead and I bought it again, and I'll leave you the link below. It's a little on the runny side, so if you need to put it on thick, you put some of it on, give it a day to dry, put some on again, you can level it out. I had to do that in 2 areas, but most of the time, it's like it says, it's really like a crack filler. And if your crack's too big, you're gonna have to give it more than 1 application. This stuff works great. Now the other one I got, this is from DAP. Now around some of the windows on the house, before I painted it, I had some cracking. And I knew if I painted them, you know, those cracks are going to show. And I have a textured finish, stucco finish on the outside of the house. So what I did is I bought, you know, this Elastipatch. It's right here. Again, the links are below. And with the caulking gun, I squirted it on down the crack. And I had, you know, latex gloves on. I just went like this, and I just rubbed it in like this, back and forth. I let it sit till the next morning, which was when I started painting, painted it. They don't even show. And this stuff's inexpensive. I mean, both of these are inexpensive products for the quality job that they do. I've used them in the past, so rather than try something new or another brand, I kind of stuck with what I know. These two work great. I'd suggest them. The paint, of course, that's up to you. Personally, I want good quality paint. That's the reason why I stuck with Behr. I mean, I don't want the cheap, watery, whatever, I don't know, whatever. To each their own. Let's go out back. Let me show you what I did with the Durham wood putty. We'll start to wrap this up. I'll see you in just a sec. So what you're looking at is a fascia board, okay? And you can see where it's got 2 metal straps that I put on there on the far right. They were warped out really bad. I mean, and so I thought I may have to replace the whole thing. I didn't want to do it right away. I will be replacing it downstream. But for right now, I put those 2 metal straps on there, got the wood wet, and with clamps, I was able to pull this back in nice and tight. Okay, now after that, I went ahead and I applied the Durham's, you know, water putty like I showed you, and that's what you see here. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a random orbital sander. I'm using 60 grit, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this smooth and get it ready for painting. But what it did, if you look close, you'll see where it has sealed up all of those bad cracks. And once I sand this and paint it, it shouldn't be noticeable. So let's get after it. So you can see that Durham's water putty worked out great. Just sanded it and feathered it all in, then it's your choice, just go ahead and paint it. But those are the only real obstacles, I mean, that I ran into, but with inexpensive products. And like I said, there's the Durham's, I got some crack filler, I didn't spend a whole lot of money on this ancillary stuff, Visqueen, you know, and of course the tape, all links below. Okay, so are there any other questions? I mean, otherwise I would tell you this is a good buy. I mean, especially at the price, because I did end up painting the whole house, saved one hell of a lot of money. I mean, so you could do the same thing. I mean, if that's what you're interested in. Now, somebody did send me a thing saying, can you spray lacquer through this? Yes. Now, you may not want to drill the hole out in that case. You may want to leave it at the 1.4. But with lacquer, use lacquer thinner and a tub and clean the parts and get everything super clean. Make sure you use an inline filter. You got your pressure, probably going to set it less. Probably, well, on my other small HVLP, it's not this one, I think I have the pressure set around 28 to 30 or somewhere there. I have it set much lower because it's not shooting out the same amount of volume, and I don't need the pressure setting, I mean high, I mean, because I want a nice, I do a lot of wood turning, so I don't need these big spray patterns. So mine's set a little bit differently. You'll learn how to tweak this yourself. I'm just showing you the basics. Set this up this way. The air pressure gauge down here, this part from out at Harbor Freight, and I'll leave you the link on Amazon. I've got one on each one of my guns. This is great because I just leave the other pressure one wide open. I can adjust my pressure right here at the gun. Some people adjust it back like they have a canister filter, and it also has a gauge on it, but it still travels through the line. I like having mine up here on the gun. Okay, folks, that's where I'll wrap the video. Thanks for watching. I haven't been putting out a lot of videos lately. I work in healthcare. We're incredibly busy, but I'll do these, when I can, and I'll have more upcoming ones on different products and things that I do. And I hope you subscribe, stay with me. And if you know of something better or you have a different way of setting this up, drop it in the comment below. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. You folks have a great day. Bye-bye.